Here is John Shannon, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada.
One of
the
us
host
should
of
be in
100%,
an institution. That's what.
host of 100% Hockey, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia. How are you, Mr. Shannon?
Living the dream today, boys. Spring has sprung in Ontario.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Finally
I heard
got
it was
there
getting
for
hot.
you.
I heard it was getting hot.
I saw some Ontarians grumbling about my golfing photos of a couple of weeks ago. So
I contemplated wearing shorts to Costco today. That's how good it is.
Oh, wow.
Brave on both fronts. Going to Costco in the first place.
Costco,
And
I love the $700 club. It's fantastic.
that's actually light for me, believe it or not.
Well, you make more money than I do now, Blake. So
No, I just have more mouths than you do. That's all.
My dad's pretty old. He doesn't hear as well as he used to. But if the word Costco is uttered near him, he instantly recoils and gets grumpy.
My wife hates going to Costco with me because people still recognize me every once in a while, and so it drives her nuts that I go to Costco and people say, "Oh, I love the show. How's the Bobcat doing?" That type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's happened to me as well.
Blue hairs at Costco. That's what I can tell you right now.
Me too. I'm sitting there contemplating the jumbo tub of salsa, and someone comes over and says, "Love the show."
Yeah.
All right. What's your synopsis, sir, of what the Canucks did or didn't do?
Because they didn't go Costco shopping. They went to the corner store and decided on nothing.
They were so quiet last week that you felt that there was absolutely something big going on. That's just the way Jimmy and to a lesser extent Patrick work, is that they pounce on you. If they haven't done it before, like the middle of January, they pounce on you with something big. Quite frankly, there was just, to me, as I understand it, they couldn't afford to trade Besser without getting a goal scorer back, because they've already lost one goal scorer in JT Miller, and they needed to find a place where those goals were going to come from. So if you trade Besser, you're down two of your, in theory, top four goal scorers, and that's a problem.
John, do you believe it was Jim and Patrick deciding we have to make the playoffs even if it costs us in terms of adding future assets, or do you think they were responding to a mandate from ownership?
I think it was the consensus of the group. How's that? I do think with the great steps forward this organization made last year, propelled this team to believe that they were going to be back in that same situation, if not farther, this year. So I think there's a bit of stubbornness in that, and I don't see anything wrong with the stubbornness to say, hey, listen, we're good enough to make the playoffs. And quite frankly, guys, if everybody becomes healthy and the goaltending returns to what we expect it to be, this is a win and get in, or get in and win league. Get in and win league. And if you think you can get a wild card spot and then make a trek to the conference final, then God bless you. I do think that. Do I think Francesco wanted to make the playoffs? Yeah, I do. I think he wants to make the playoffs every year. I also think that Jim and Patrick want to make the playoffs too.
It's not a 100-game season, though, and Quinn Hughes is in a non-contact jersey, and Demko's not even practicing. So it's I agree. If there was more runway left, you could take the optimist side of things, and if it's pre-deadline, again, reason for optimism to add. But with all those factors, man, it does not look promising for these Canucks, and I do wonder what management is thinking about their imminent future here, because the world was their oyster right up until, even after they lost and were eliminated in the playoffs last year. You go that deep, you're feeling pretty good about life. So much has gone wrong this season. So far away from where they were a year ago, both in the standings and just in roster makeup. Do you think that they, in their heart of hearts, think that this team can win as early as next season?
Define. I'm not trying to be evasive, but define win.
Challenge what they did last year. At least be that.
I do. Yeah. I do. I also think that they're going to find a way to use some of those extra dollars in the offseason too. When you have, if you can imagine, I would say that your five best players, you trade one of them, the other one has had a horrific year. Your best defenseman is now injured. Your number one goaltender's injured. And it is an unbelievable domino of problems that this team had this year.
And your 40 goal scorer can't score right now either.
And he was the guy who was having a horrific year. So.
Oh, I think you're talking about Pettersson. Okay, there's a few candidates.
Yeah, I know. I was talking about Pettersson. So I don't think you can blame this management team nor the coach for the injuries to Hughes or Demko. I don't think you can do that. I don't know about Pettersson. You have to hope that there's a way to turn him around, although he has played better of late. But he needs to be more consistent. He wasn't very good on Sunday night. He was good on Saturday night. So those are the types of things that need to be addressed somehow, some way. And let's face it, Rick Tocchet, listening to Rick after the Dallas game when he's talking about ice time and talking about earning the ice time, Rick's had enough. He's now said, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And forget about massaging people. They tried to massage people all season long and it didn't work. Now they're just going to play the hard and fast Tocchet way.
I have two follow-ups. You have always been most bullish on the Canucks' chances this season, John. Gosh, I think I've asked you the follow-up
every time.
Well, not every week, but once a month for sure. If I told, and I have a Tocchet follow-up here in a second, but if I told you that Quinn Hughes would not be 100% the rest of the way and that they may not be able to count on Thatcher Demko the rest of the way, would that change your opinion on this team as a playoff team?
Might change my opinion. If Hughes is not available for, 19 games? If he's not available for that period of time, then that's an issue. This right now, this 6 home games of 7, to me, is the season. This is it. Montreal tonight, Chicago, Utah, Winnipeg, and then sandwiched in there is the game tomorrow night in Calgary, which is, I don't have to explain how important that one is. These, they're 2-1 on this little group of games right now. They have to make sure that they win. Well, I think they have to win 4 of the 5. I really do, because I know you guys have to check the schedule. That 6-game road trip, that is torture in March. Torture. And I just don't see how they could accomplish anything if they're not in a really good spot at the end of this homestand, which ends, by the way, with the Winnipeg Jets coming to town.
Mm-hmm. And that road trip ends in Winnipeg as well. St. Louis, Rangers, Devils, Islanders, Blue Jackets, Jets.
And they're all and everybody's fighting for something. It's not as if there's no layups other than the Chicago game in any of this. There's no layups, and that's the real challenge right now. So, win at home, do your best. Win at home, win in Calgary, and I think they can survive.
Yeah, my Tocchet follow up. You mentioned it. He's doing it his way now.
Yeah,
he's gotten frustrated here this week with media and officials. Something we almost not. I'm not sure we saw it once in the Tocchet era, in terms of outward frustration towards the media, outward frustration towards officials from the bench. He, of course, has the mutual option, so both he and the Canucks have to agree to come back. And, of course, in a perfect world, I'm sure he's looking for the extension. Knowing what you know now, do you think Rick Tocchet is back next season?
I think this whole group of guys is back. I think that they have unfinished business now. I think that this season has created that so-called slogan of unfinished business, and they want to right the ship. There's only 32 of these jobs. There's only 32 of them. And this is still a great hockey market to coach in. It's a great country to coach in. And Rick Tocchet's a good coach. And I think that the challenge of being able to prove to people that this team is better than what they have showed this year based on what we saw last year and what they're going to create in the summertime, I think that Tocchet's back.
Do you think everyone involved will have the choice to come back if they miss the playoffs? Does somebody have to walk the plank?
I think. Listen, you mean other than players? You mean?
Yes, sir.
I think players should walk the plank before this group does. I really do. I think that the onus has been on the players, and the players have not responded as well as they should have. I mean, I don't want to drag up the Pedersen Miller thing before, but we're dealing with adults. Stop it. Let's do it right, and manage it properly within the room. Solve the problems. JT, but we're not hearing about any issues in New York. We're not. And if the Rangers do have a chance to make the playoffs, a lot of it's on the back of JT Miller. So I'm one of those guys that I think that the onus is on the players, and I'm starting to believe in what Rick said after the game against Dallas. But this is at some point the players have to take responsibility.
Rick Tocchet doesn't have hair to go gray, but he's got a little bit of that pre and post Obama. You remember the before and after photos of him coming into office and leaving? I feel like there's a little bit of that with Rick Tocchet here after the year that he's had. And, of course, we've made the point. He makes very close to what he would make as a head coach on TV, I'm sure, and he stays undefeated for the entire season.
I don't think I think you're probably talking about half the amount of money that he would make on TV.
Yeah. He won't be struggling, though, is more my point.
No. These guys don't have to work again in their lives. What are you talking about?
He's picking fights with the media here lately. Like, I wonder.
Actually, Blake, let me ask you a question. And yeah. I love Vancouver. I do. I do. It's in my blood still. What coach never picked a fight with the media after a while? Tell me one guy. Even Bruce used to get mad every once in a while.
I was going to say, Bruce and Paul Maurice are the two guys who come to mind.
Willie Desjardins wouldn't dare. Willie Desjardins wouldn't have dared. He wasn't a good coach.
That doesn't mean he wasn't ticked off.
Oh, no, for sure. But he didn't pick a fight. When you're picking a fight with the media, it means your nerve is exposed. It means you can't control yourself because of your emotion getting too high. And
or you're sick and tired of bad questions.
Well,
there's that too, Blake. And there are a lot of
bad questions.
Oh, my God.
Asking why Brock Besser wasn't wearing an A is not a bad question. After years of seeing him in an A. That's not a bad question. And that's what ticked him off last time out. And he was still thinking about the next day. He has to begin the press conference talking about it. Like, these are the kind of things, as an NHL head coach, they have to be water off your back. You can't get consumed by it.
I think there are times, Blake, I think Vancouver might be the toughest place to work in the National Hockey League because of the proactive nature of the media. I really do. I think it's. I used to say Montreal, but Marty seems to have managed Montreal really well, and so I just think that there are times when you're right. The nerves get frayed, and you get ticked off, and I think you have to respect that as well. That they care as much as anybody else, but there are times when you're trying to stay focused on the job at hand, and the job at hand is winning, not necessarily who has an A.
It's just when we see a dumpster fire rolling down the street, we're going to call it such. And this year has been a dumpster fire rolling down the street. I don't know how we ask media not to point that out. And it just...
We don't. Nobody...
I don't think anybody's questioned that part.
No.
Well, but you're saying don't ask quite. It's been a terrible season. There's going to be some hard questions asked of this team. And the fact that they react like they do, it's out of our control.
Rick knows that.
Sure he does.
Yeah, I mean.
He just hates losing too.
Well, look, I think it would be naive to think that the Miller-Pedersen thing hasn't taken a huge
1,000%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, I think this was such a unique situation.
Which is my point of why he might just dust his hands off and go, guys, I'm out here.
Yeah, I mean, although...
Particularly if that player's still around.
Let me. I understand what you're saying. Do you think he should, Blake?
No, I mean,
you want him to be the coach of the Vancouver Canucks next year?
Well, I have concerns about his coaching for sure, about his style.
Style because of the players he has.
Well, even going back though, we chronicled this yesterday, John. Going back now almost 20 months. This team is in the mid-20s in scoring in the NHL. So even when he had the full roster of Miller and Pettersson, everybody, they didn't score many goals. In fact, you could make the argument he coached them out of the goal scoring that tilts the numbers in his favor in his early part of the tenure. That was just because he was still coaching the old system to some degree. And he said he didn't want them to focus too much on his new system in the first few months. So he coached goals out of this team when they used to know how to score. And so that is a concern for me going forward, yes. But more, I'm just saying, I don't know that he'll want to coach here is more what I'm posing here, that this is just too much hassle. This group doesn't mesh with what he wants to do very clearly with his repeated saying he benched his top 4 players last game and said, you got to earn ice time. He's been saying this for weeks on end. At some point, does he just say, this isn't the group? And guys, if you can't change the whole group, I'm not coming back.
I don't. That's like saying I'm going to take my football and go home. I don't see Rick Tocchet saying I'm going to take my football and go home. I think he'd rather confront you and try to fix it than do that. Honestly.
Well, there's a fine line between that makes it sound like he's giving up. I don't think it's giving up. We all put ourselves in positions to succeed. And if he doesn't see a position to succeed there, it's not giving up. It's called making a business decision.
Well, the business decision, he gets paid really well to be the coach of the Vancouver Canucks. So I understand what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying. I see that he's going to prove to people that he can coach and be this is a really good hockey team. And this team, if not this year, then next year can be a playoff team.
To answer your question, John, I do want him back as coach next year. I think he did an extraordinary job last year. And I do think if given the right personnel, I think
he hasn't gotten dumb over 6 months. He hasn't.
No, but here's the problem. I do think we are getting towards, unless things change dramatically here in the final quarter of the season and maybe playoffs, I do think we're getting to an either Elias or Rick has to go proposition. I think Elias is very difficult to reach. I think Rick has done his best. I do wonder whether he's been wholly tuned out by the head coach. We saw some progress by the player. We saw some progress last week. Yeah. It'd be great if that continued and we could talk about a brighter future. But if Elias reverts to what we saw against Dallas, then I do wonder about either getting a new voice for him or having to move him out. So I think that's where we're slowly marching.
It wouldn't surprise me that that's been the philosophy inside the front office is, okay, we get rid of Miller. Let's see what happens the remainder of the season before we have to make a hard and fast decision on number 40.
Yeah, because if Elias can't work with JT and Elias can't work with Rick, the problem is Elias at that point, even if you want to assign part of the blame and say JT was a problem, which I do think he was as well. But, not everything is going to be perfect around you, and that's something that I think Elias has to understand going forward. I don't think you can cater to his every whim here. A great a player as he is.
I agree. I agree. I think it's about time that he showed what he's worth. He has to. Mm-hmm. At some point, he has to show what he's worth. I mean, he's making more money right now than Mitch Marner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If he's making
more money than Willie Nylander, and Willie has as many goals as Elias has points.
Yeah.
So
I think if he's not here, it looks a lot more probable for Rick Tocchet to come back, and probably a little more rosy for him to come back as well. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Now the big question: when is John Shannon coming back to his home and native British Columbia. John, not that I want to push you into retirement. I know that's many decades away, but when you do retire, are you coming back here to beautiful BC? Or are you going to set up shop here on the coast, by the mountains, play golf 12 months of the year?
No, if I come home, it won't be there. If I come home, it will be somewhere between Vernon and the border. So we'll try to find a place between the North Okanagan and the South Okanagan, and if I have to drive the 4 hours to play golf with you boys, it might be worth it.
John we know John will drive extraordinary lengths to see his friends.
We've got friends in Kelowna that can arrange for golf there.
Every single real estate agent in the Okanagan, you are on notice. Shannon is looking for a spot that suits him.
Yeah, no. Listen, you'd be amazed. I tell people here, I have lived in Ontario now since 1993, and I still view myself as a British Columbian. There is just a mentality, and it's a mentality that people don't understand, and then you have a conversation for 20 minutes, and they kind of understand.
John, I've told this story before, but I'm a Cub reporter on the Leafs beat in Toronto. Pat Quinn is the head coach, and for a guy who grew up in Hamilton, at the end of the Leafs season, Pat Quinn makes his exodus to Vancouver. And so I'm sitting with a bunch of Leafs reporters one day, and they're bitching and crying about how Quinn is the head coach and GM, and he doesn't work in our city during the summer, and we never get to see him or talk to him during the summer. And what's the big deal about Vancouver? Every time I go there, it's raining. And somebody piped up, have you ever been there in July?
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, even now, I watched local Vancouver news the other day, and they had some outdoor shots, and I'm saying, what? And I looked out the window and saw the snowbank 4 feet tall. Saying, what am I doing here?
What are you
doing? Come on.
Yeah.
We got to get home soon.
Can't wait to see you here, and can't wait to see you next week. Thanks for this, John. Appreciate it.
Cheers, boys.